Disclosure Day is Steven Spielberg's 37th film, and like everyone else, I was walking into this wondering one question. Has the man lost his touch yet? Hello everyone, my name is Jake from Talk Too Much, and I had the absolute joy of going to go see Disclosure Day. This is Steven Spielberg's 37th film. I'm going to see in theaters. I believe the man's like 86 years old, and of course, just like all other Steven Spielberg movies, you have to have a little bit of weirdness into it. And seeing that this is his fourth Alien movie out of his whole filmography, I was just wondering, what else does this man have to say about aliens? I do have a little bit of a background with Spielberg. One of the funniest stories I have is when my mom was, I think, 7 years old. Her, my uncle, and my aunt all went to the beach, and just one day, my uncle decided to throw on Jaws, and my poor mother, who was 7 years old and didn't understand at the time, watched Jaws. Of course, on the beach trip, and she wouldn't even get as far as going to the pool. And if you want to talk about someone being mad, my grandpa was not the happiest that week. Because just imagine, you're driving all the way up there, going on a nice beach. And of course, your son decides to throw on Jaws for your daughter. And that's the story of my introduction, at least in my family, to Steven Spielberg. As for my dad, I was one of the fortunate, lucky ones to be able to go to Blockbuster at the time when Indiana Jones came out. I believe it was like the 2008 one. I can't remember the name fully off the top of my head, but I just remember new Indiana Jones was coming out, and my dad was super excited because he grew up with those movies. So, of course, me being about 7 years old, my dad, he's so into it, he really wanted to introduce me to it. And we took home Indiana Jones, watched the very first scene, and the man gets a knife in his head. And immediately, my mother was in the kitchen and she was looking, she saw that, and she was like, I think you're going to have to turn that off. And immediately, I could just see the little bit of regret on my dad's face for not realizing that that scene was coming. So that was my introduction to Spielberg. Now, of course, I grew up with E.T. as well. It's been so long since I've seen it, probably at least 20 plus years since I've watched E.T. I do need to go back to it. So I do have a little bit of recognition when it comes to Spielberg. So the plot to Disclosure Day, it's fairly simple. It's about these people getting a hold of the information from the government, saying the actual proof that aliens exist, and it all comes down to they're wondering, is this information too much for the people to handle? Can we release this information to the public? How is the public going to react? And so I believe during the movie they're on the brink of World War III, and with that, someone gets a hold of a flash drive that simply has all the information, has all the answers. This movie, it did take me in for a little bit of a whirlwind. I'm not the biggest fan of 2.5 hour long movies. I've heard that's kind of Spielberg's thing lately, where a lot of his more recent movies, they tend to hit that 2 hour, 2.5 hour mark. And so for me, it leaves me scratching my head, kind of a little cautious going in, being like, does this man have enough to really say and put out there? And while I can say, going into my pros, my mix, and my negatives here, I will say it's actually a pretty decent film to have. And I would even go as far as to say, if any other director was to direct a film like this, I think ultimately it would fall on its face. The fact that this whole idea was on Spielberg's hands, I think kind of very much helped it, and you can see that watching into the movie. So let's get into my pros here. Spielberg does his job. It's exactly what it needs to be. It's shot amazing. And you know that when the action sequences are coming, they're all going to be left and right, all going to be amazing. I think that performances are great all the way around, all the way from Emily Blunt to as well as the lead actor of the movie. All of them do a great job. And I would say that Emily Blunt is definitely someone who gets better over time. Like a lot of people say that, but really, I've never come across a bad performance from her. I even enjoy her in Devil Wears Prada 1 and 2. I think she has a lot of good movies under her belt and a lot of great performances that are definitely worthy of being talked about. Do I think it's an Oscar nomination? I'm going to have to hold you on that one for a second. But overall, she was such a joy that whenever she was on screen, she was the part I cared the most about in this movie. Going back to another positive is the director, Steven Spielberg. He does his job. I'm very happy with it. And it doesn't feel like he's lost his touch or anything. When you're going through all the chase scenes and all the intense scenes, especially the one with the train, no spoilers, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. When it gets to the train sequence, you're a little bit on edge watching it, and it's actually shot really well. It's done really well. So you can at least count on the director aspect of this movie to be phenomenal. One more pro here before I go into my mix is that John Williams doing the score gave me that very, very weird feeling during the first act of this movie when I was watching this, and I'm like, this doesn't feel like a 2026 Spielberg movie. This is like going back to the classic eras. And I feel like most people have already said that, but to me, it was a huge pro. I grew up with Star Wars. So I would say out of all the things that were my first love for movies, Star Wars was probably the biggest one. And then I went on to Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter later. But Star Wars is where I originally started. So hearing John Williams comes back, there's just something about it with modern day production to where you get a little bit hit of nostalgia, a little bit of emotion to it, and I think that's what Spielberg's goal was for this movie. Now, on to my mixes. I tend to have a few mixed feelings with this movie, and there's nothing really bad to say about it. Like I said, if any director was to have this movie in their hands, it would fall flat out on its face. It would. And so my biggest mix is at the ending of this movie. Now, this is a 2.5 hour long movie. Keep that in mind. And when I was watching it, I'm kind of more so scratching my head as to how this is all going to resolve, especially when you get to the last like 25 minutes. You're kind of left like, okay, how are they going to wrap all this up to where it makes sense? And instead of wrapping it up and having it make sense, they just leave it up to your interpretation. That's exactly how this movie ends. Is it's kind of like something gets said in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and it's very quiet. You don't hear it. It's not played out for you, nothing. You hear it in a whisper, and it's just left up to you to see what it is. And you're kind of puzzled, scratching your head at the end of this movie, like I was at least, where I was leaving, and I was like, what was the point in that a little bit? Like, I get the ending, I do, but like, what am I left to be interpreted with? Like, is this real? Is this not real? Did they make the right decision? And that kind of became a big mix factor when I was left with this movie. And now, I do think Spielberg, while he does do a great job, the problem with this movie is that it feels a little too long, and I think some of his sections could have been trimmed of a lot of fat. And that's where I'll get into my negatives. This is a 2.5 hour long movie, and where you don't feel it in the first hour and a half, when you get to that last hour, it does drop the pacing a little bit. And then oddly enough, when you're transitioning from the second to third act, the third act feels ultimately rushed while the second act is taking its sweet time, and you're just like, it drags on some. And that's what started to make me struggle enjoying this film, is that it just drags a little bit too long. Again, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go for a 2.5 hour long movie. That is just simply not who I am. But I ultimately think, as for an experience, it's great and it holds up. And I can respect it more on that side rather than this is another alien movie from Spielberg. Out of all four of them, probably going to be the least likely one I am to throw on, if we're just being honest. But again, it's not a bad movie. It's just I'm sitting through 2.5 hours trying to piece together all the information that is being thrown at me nonstop, because they don't just give you a beginning, middle, and end. It's just you are caught straight up in the middle of this, in the middle of everything happening. The guy's already got the hard drive. There's no other explanation. He has a hard drive. He just needs to go. And that's exactly how this movie is. And while I can appreciate you trying to get my sense of urgency, trying to have me piece all the puzzles together, when I get to that second to third act, I feel like I'm watching a horse that is holding up by the front two legs, but its back legs are really kind of struggling to keep finishing the lap going. And it's unfortunate to say that, but I don't view it as a positive way. I just view this as, maybe this is a movie that over time, if I rewatch it more and more, maybe I can get behind it. But that is looking like a long time from now. Probably I will do a Spielberg ranking video, and that may be the one time I end up rewatching this film, but I'm just not going to go out of my way for this. So overall, I think if you're a Spielberg fan, you're not going to complain about this movie. You're going to be happy that this man's still making movies, and you should be. This is his 37th movie, and I don't know as much other outside of the Jaws, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park. Again, it's been forever since I've seen E.T., so I've seen a lot of Spielberg fans have the most fun with this movie. I only hope that you give it a shot. I probably wouldn't wait for streaming on this one, unless you just absolutely have no time. Go see it in theaters. It's worth seeing in theaters. I can at least praise it for that. Overall, these are my thoughts. Let me know down below in the comments what you think. I'm curious to hear. I mean, we all know Jurassic Park is one of the greatest ones, and Indiana Jones and all the others, but I want to know where this one ranks for you. So let me know down below in the comments, like and share. I'll see you guys in the next video.